Imagine a mathematical problem so incredibly dense, so unimaginably complex that it just completely defies human comprehension. A problem where if you took the absolute fastest supercomputer on Earth right now and you let it run from the literal moment of the Big Bang until this exact second, it wouldn't even be close to finished. Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping out of the realm of science fiction and into a profound new reality that has honestly just reshaped the entire global balance of technological power. 10 to the 42nd power years. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. That's the exact amount of time it would take the world's most powerful classical supercomputer, the American machine known as El Capitan, to solve a specific mathematical paradox called Gaussian boson sampling. To put that into perspective for you, the universe itself is only about 13.8 billion years old. So this time frame, it literally makes the entire age of the cosmos look like a tiny rounding error. It's a mathematical eternity, an absolute, seemingly insurmountable wall. Okay, let's dive into this, because while classical computers are staring down that wall of 10 to the 42nd power years, a brand new machine has just shattered that limit entirely. China's new quantum computer, Jiuzhang 4.0, solved this exact same problem in 25.6 microseconds. Yeah, microseconds. That is a fraction of the blink of an eye. This uncrackable code was cracked before you could even realize the machine was plugged in. Just look at this headline for a moment from South China Morning Post. This is the news behind today's video. Does China's Jiuzhang 4.0 computer herald the age of quantum supremacy? New programmable photonic quantum computing prototype completed a complex calculation in microseconds, developers say. With that said, let's go straight to the intro. The algorithm buries channels that show the truth like mine every single day. The only thing that fights back is you. One like, one subscribe, turn on the bell icon. That's how the truth about China survives on YouTube. Don't let it disappear. Thank you very much. So, our mission for today's explainer is simple but massive. We are going to uncover exactly how a room temperature photonic architecture achieved this unbelievable quantum dominance. And we'll look at what it means for the global balance of power, global supply chains, and really the entire future of human technology. Moving right into part 1, shattering limits, the power of 3050 photons. Right, so if you look at the classical computing side, the absolute pinnacle of our current technology relies on algorithms like matrix product states. These are essentially classical methods of compressing quantum states. They're basically trying to cheat the math by taking shortcuts. But here's the thing, even with the best shortcuts in the world, the math translates to a computational speedup of factor of 10 to the 54th power for Jiuzhang 4.0. In the world of high-performance computing, this isn't just taking the lead, it is a total technological eclipse. We're talking about exploring a Hilbert space dimension of 10 to the 2461st power. A space of that magnitude represents a web of possibilities so vast that classical algorithms just completely collapse trying to map it out. It's kind of like trying to find one specific grain of sand hidden somewhere across a trillion identical Earths. There's just no way a classical machine can do that. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how staggering the velocity of innovation is here. Back in 2020, the very first Jiuzhang prototype manipulated just 76 photons. By 2023, they pushed it to 255. But Jiuzhang 4.0, it leaps to an astonishing 3,050 photons across 8,176 modes. They pulled this off by using what's called a spatio-temporal hybrid-coded architecture. Okay, in simple terms, instead of just building a physical chip, they forced the light to interact in these really complex loops of time. This gave the machine an explosive, exponential growth in power without needing a massive physical footprint. It gives the system cubic scaling, meaning for every tiny addition to the hardware, the processing power just multiplies exponentially faster. But, as you might guess, manipulating light is notoriously tricky because, well, photons tend to get lost. Historically, critics argued that this photon loss, which often exceeded 70% in earlier experiments, meant photonic systems would always be vulnerable to classical spoofing. Basically, if too many photons are lost, classical supercomputers can just trace the remaining data and mimic the quantum state. However, by officially crossing a 51% overall system efficiency threshold, Jiuzhang 4.0 achieved something absolutely critical. It completely closed that loss-based loophole. The quantum state stays in such a high entanglement regime that classical simulation is now definitively officially blocked. Let's pivot to part 2. Export immunity, the room temperature revolution. So on the Western track, tech giants like Google and IBM are betting heavily on superconducting qubits. But there's a huge catch. Those processors must be cooled to near absolute zero. We're talking colder than the deepest void of outer space. Naturally, this requires massive, highly regulated cryogenic cooling systems. And as a geopolitical chess move, strict export controls were actually placed on these exact cryogenic systems by the West to slow down competitors. But the Chinese track with Jiuzhang 4.0 is photonic. It uses particles of light. And guess what? Photons don't care about the heat. This machine operates entirely at room temperature, completely bypassing the need for any of that restricted cryogenic infrastructure. Furthermore, this project fostered a completely independent, entirely domestic supply chain. Shanghai Prisa Laser Technology, a domestic supplier, actually provided the high-efficiency lasers for Jiuzhang 4.0. It's a very direct realization of China's 15th five-year plan targeting technological sovereignty. And here's the fascinating reality of global supply chains today. This domestic supply chain is now so advanced that it's actively exporting equipment to top Western institutions like Harvard University. It's kind of ironic, really. They're buying from the exact supply chain those export controls initially sought to outpace. Which brings us to part 3, next steps, or solving the future. You might be wondering, why does this matter to me? Let's get right into it. Because this isn't just for running abstract math benchmarks anymore, folks. Jiuzhang 4.0 solves what are known as maximum weighted cleave problems. That's essentially finding the absolute optimal connection in a chaotic web of data. In the real world, this means predicting complex RNA folding structures with incredible accuracy. We're talking about slashing the time it takes to develop life-saving medicine from decades down to mere weeks. But on the flip side, we have cybersecurity to think about. The sheer computational force of this machine directly threatens current cryptographic networks. And yeah, that includes global financial systems and Bitcoin. It literally makes today's standard encryption look like a paper lock. So the crucial point is how this integrates directly with artificial intelligence. Scientists are currently utilizing these massive photonic networks as quantum reservoirs. By feeding the deeply complex quantum correlations of a machine like Jiuzhang into standard machine learning models, researchers have already documented accuracy improvements of over 20% in complex forecasting tasks. That is huge. This right here is the bedrock for an entirely new generation of AI, utterly supercharged by quantum hardware. The true historical weight of this moment is captured in a single defining realization from the sources. The era of Western monopoly on high technology is over. Jiuzhang 4.0 is a monument to human ingenuity with a Chinese heart. Now, impartially speaking, China is currently the only country on Earth to demonstrate definitive quantum advantage across two entirely different hardware tracks simultaneously: the air temperature photonic systems like Jiuzhang and the supercooled superconducting systems like Jiuzhang Z series. So it leaves us with this massive, unavoidable question. When a single machine can crack our hardest, most intricate problems in a matter of microseconds, who truly controls the future? We are no longer waiting for the quantum age to arrive. We are living inside of it right now, and the rules of the game have fundamentally changed overnight. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the cutting edge of the future today. If you enjoyed this deep dive explainer, make absolutely sure you subscribe to the channel for more focused, visually driven explainers on the technologies that are actively rewriting our reality. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.